Namaste. A warm welcome to everyone present here. I, Dr. Nisha Tangachan, Assistant Professor, Department of Physics, feel deeply honored to extend a wholehearted welcome to you all for today's special event, the Indic talk by Dr. Rajiv Malhotra ji on his latest book, Who is Raising Your Children? On behalf of Indus University, we extend a warm and respectful welcome to our esteemed chief guest, Dr. Rajiv Malhotra ji, our guest of honor, Dr. Indumati Katdare ji, our Honorable Presidential Secretariat, Dr. Nagesh Bhandari sir, and Dr. Ritu Bhandari ma'am. Professor Dr. Sandeep Chakravarti sir, Honorable Executive President, Dr. R.K. Singh sir, Registrar, Dr. Sukito Jani sir, Deputy Registrar, Ms. Radhika Bhandari ma'am, Dean of Aviation and Director of WIIA, Dr. Ritendra Sharma sir, Dean Indic Studies, Dr. Ketan Laktaria sir, Dean ISEC, respected HOIs, HODs, DGMs, faculty members, staff members, and fellow students present here today. What happens when the very institution that you trust to shape young minds and futures turn against its own purpose? What happens when academia, once a sanctuary for truth and inquiry, becomes a breeding ground for ideological manipulation? We are talking about the growing woke culture in academic institutions, where critical thinking is replaced by conformity, dissent is punished rather than debated, and activism takes precedence over scholarship. When education itself becomes a tool of indoctrination, the consequences are profound. We are not just facing a crisis in pedagogy, we are watching the slow collapse of a culture that once valued nuance, complexity, and the pursuit of truth. To enlighten us on this grave concern, we are privileged to have with us today our chief guest, Dr. Rajiv Malhotra ji. Once we are enriched by his insights, we shall move to the second part of this evening, where we will have the wisdom of our guest of honor, Dr. Indumati Katdare ji, deliberating upon the latest book authored by Dr. Ankur Kakkar, Land of Pathshalas, which will be officially launched today. Together, this evening will be celebration of knowledge, wisdom, and civilizational continuity of Bharat. Let us begin by invoking Goddess Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge and wisdom, to bless this occasion with clarity and positivity. May I request all the dignitaries to kindly come forward for the lighting of the lamp. I request the esteemed dignitaries, Dr. Rajiv Malhotra ji, Dr. Indumati Katdare ji, Honorable Presidential Secretary Dr. Nagesh Bhandari sir, and Dr. Ritu Bhandari ma'am, to please take their places on the dais. May I request Dr. Nagesh Bhandari sir, Honorable Presidential Secretariat, to kindly welcome our chief guest, Dr. Rajiv Malhotra ji, with a shawl and sapling. May I request Dr. Ritu Bhandari ma'am, Honorable Presidential Secretariat, to welcome our guest of honor, Dr. Indumati Katdare ji, with a shawl and sapling. May I request Professor Dr. Sandeep Chakravarti, sir, Honorable Executive President, to extend a warm welcome to our Honorable Presidential Secretariat, Dr. Nagesh Bhandari, sir, with a sapling. Also, may I request Professor Dr. Sandeep Chakravarti, sir, once again to extend a warm welcome to our Honorable Presidential Secretariat, Dr. Ritu Bhandari, ma'am, with a sapling. Established in 2015 under the visionary guidance and unwavering support of Dr. Nagesh Bhandari sir, Honorable Presidential Secretariat, the Center for Indic Studies has emerged as a true torchbearer of civilizational knowledge and scholarship. From its very inception, Dr. Nagesh Bhandari sir envisioned CIS as a platform to revive and spread India's timeless wisdom. With his constant encouragement, the center has hosted hundreds of Indic talks, published thousands of Indic Varta articles, integrated Indic knowledge into university curricula, and launched impactful online courses. It is a foresight of Dr. Nagesh Bhandari ji that enabled CIS to be far ahead of its time. Long before the national education policy emphasized Indian knowledge systems, CIS was already pioneering this movement. Today, the Center for Indic Studies stands as a shining beacon of hope, much like the pole star guiding seekers of wisdom and achievement possible only because of his visionary leadership. On this special occasion, we extend our heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Nagesh Bhandari sir, whose dedication and vision continues to inspire us all. Moving ahead with the first event, which all of us are eagerly waiting, it is now my privilege to introduce our esteemed chief guest, Dr. Rajiv Malhotra ji. Dr. Rajiv Malhotra ji is a renowned author, public speaker, and philanthropist known for his insightful writings on Western Eastern interactions, Indian culture, and globalization. With a formal education background in physics, Dr. Rajiv Malhotra ji is one of the pioneering scholars championing the Indic causes. He is the founder of the Infinity Foundation, which is one of the foremost institutions that are propagating the Indic values and thoughts around the globe. A prolific author, he has penned a plethora of literary works. To name a few, his Breaking India exposes how foreign funded NGOs and academic institutions allegedly fuel divisive identity politics in India. The Being Different argues for the uniqueness of Indian civilization and challenges Western universalism in philosophy and culture. The Indra's Nets defends the unity of Hinduism against claims that it's a fragmented or colonial construct. The book Varna, Jati, Caste offers a primer on Indian social structures and challenges colonial narratives about caste. The battle for Sanskrit explores whether Sanskrit is sacred or political and critiques Western interpretations of Indian texts. His Sanskrit non translatables advocates for preserving key Sanskrit terms that lose meaning when translated into English. His academic Hinduphobia critiques Western scholars like Wendy Doniger for allegedly misrepresenting Hindu traditions. His Snakes in the Ganga investigates how critical race theory and woke ideologies are influencing Indian academia and policy. And his latest book, Who is Raising Your Children, which is also today's focal aspect of his Indic talk, examines the influence of Western media, education, and woke ideologies on Indian youth and family values. A long-time friend and colleague of Dr. Nagesh Bhandari sir, Rajiv ji, has also been instrumental in guiding Indus University, especially the Center for Indic Studies, from time to time. His immense support and encouragement to promote Indic ideas here and abroad are wholeheartedly cherished by all of us. We are also delighted to announce the official launch of the Hindi version of the same book entitled Bacche Aapke Sanskar Kiske? I now request all the dignitaries, along with Ms. Radhika Bhandari ma'am, Professor Dr. Sandeep Chakravarti sir, and Dr. Ritendra Sharma sir to kindly join us on stage for the unveiling of book. Thank you all. May I now invite our esteemed chief guest, Dr. Rajiv Malhotra ji, to deliver his Indic talk and share insights from his latest book, Who is Raising Your Children? Also, those who wish to ask questions may kindly submit them to Miloni ma'am.
Namaste and thank you all of you for coming here. This is a very familiar, warm, and wonderful room I've been in many, many times and launched many of my books, given many of my talks for quite a while, many years. And I see some familiar faces and a lot of new faces also. I want to start by thanking Dr. Nagesh Bhandari ji, a dear friend and a true spirited person from our dharma who is actually following the path, doing, not just talking, and quite fearless and I must say a visionary who is ahead of his time because he's been able to do things. There are some people who are with the times, they're going with the fashion, and wherever the trend is. Some people are behind the times, and some people are ahead of the times. So, to be ahead of the times, you have to take a risk, you have to be provocative because you are not copying what everybody else is saying, but what you are saying today will be followed by many people in the future. So I'm very glad to have a true friend like that. And this is my feeling, my views about Dr. Bhandari and Rituji also. And now, in the last several years, Radhika has joined that group and become a big leader. And I'm so happy to know all of them, and through them, all of you in this hall. So thank you for welcoming me here. So I had to decide: do I talk just about this book, or position the book as part of a bigger thought, and then position that bigger thought as part of what is the methodology to produce these kind of books, and then that takes me into my own life journey. I actually haven't given talks about my own self because I like to not talk about myself, but about the work. But I will spend a few minutes on that background, so it'll give you a sense of why I do what I do, and then maybe the concern that we're going to talk about will make more sense. So I started life as a physics student. I was in St. Stephen's College in Delhi doing my physics honors. And then at the age of 20, I went to the US to do my PhD in theoretical physics. And the reason I was interested is because I'm basically a philosopher at heart and very interested in Indian philosophy. And I wanted to understand physics and philosophy from that point of view. In the US, after a while, I switched to computer science, which was a very new field. It was a new field. And in fact, when you filled out one of those immigration forms when you arrive in the US in those days, they give you a list of professions or subjects. What do you study? You're a student. So there was no computer science listed in the list of topics. So I remember those days when they would say, "What is this you're talking about?" And computer science was a topic within electrical engineering, many universities, not a field by itself. So I'm part of that. That's my age. You can tell I'm kind of old guy. So I pursued a career in the computer industry, became very successful, and but never lost interest in my philosophy. So I studied not only Indian thought, which is all the Vedic thought and Shaivism and Buddhism and all of these, but also Western thought. Very interested in all the early Western thought, medieval thought, modern thought. And being in United States gave me a chance to take all the courses I could find in the West American universities on Western thought. So I've been very comfortable both ways. And my father was very sort of westernized person from a banking background and legal background, his parents uh, in Lahore. And my mother, very traditional background, Arya Samaj, and doing, all the chanting all the Vedas by heart and so on. So I had, even at home, a combination of both kind of backgrounds. And so, and ever since I left in the 1970 time frame, which means around 55 years. Only during COVID I did not come, but every year I've come between 2 and 4 times, every single year. So my passport was stamped and stamped and stamped. Now they give me second passport, third, fifth, sixth passport because of all the stamps, so many visits. to India. So I'm very connected. People say, "आप वहाँ बैठे हैं, आपको क्या मालूम होगा?" I actually know more than most Indians because they're living very narrow life. They're living particular community they live, and particularly a Delhi wala. I've been to all the states and feel very comfortable uh, traveling and engaging people. So I'm quite secure in my Indian identity. Now, luckily, at a very early age, was introduced to very serious meditation. In the Not one guru, but so many gurus touched me, and I learned the practices, serious deep meditation from a very early age. And I learned that at some stage of meditation, you're not doing, it is happening. From the making it happen to letting it happen. And so when you let go of your ego, your control to do, then it's amazing how things happen. But there is a certain methodology of receiving. You have to first go into silence to be able to receive, because as long as you're cluttered and making noise and creating thoughts, you're not going to receive. But once you learn that and you get a glimpse of that, it is so much anand. That is what the anand is, that you want it again and again. And then that becomes a treasure, that's something you can always go to. You can always get back into that state of anand receiving. And what you receive are huge insights, huge awakenings, huge ideas, both ordinary things. You're solving some technical problem, you get suddenly aha idea, but also completely different things that you may not be even thinking about. So uh, a stage that is even beyond that, more interesting than even that, is what I call meditation off the mat. Usually it's meditation on the mat. You're sitting on a mat and you're meditating. आप बैठे हैं, एक जगह बैठे हैं कुर्सी पर या ज़मीन पर, और आंखें बंद करके आप मेडिटेट कर रहे हैं. लेकिन what happens when you open the eyes and you walk around, you lose that, you forget that. So there is another state where you are in a state of meditation when you're walking around with your eyes open, you're talking to somebody, you may be driving a car. It's a different kind of meditation, because you have that posture with which you are seeing things, seeing people, but it is not like sitting quietly with your eyes closed. It's meditation in the worldly, your life. You're living with that attitude towards you. So I had this sort of practice from pretty early age, and I developed this idea that I have experienced kind of freedom. You get this gives you freedom. So even when you are in the middle of an argument or a debate or whatever is going on, outwardly you are performing that, but inwardly you are free. You're acting that role out of freedom. You're not in bondage. You're not worried. You're not concerned कि क्या हो जाएगा. You're in that state of freedom. So freedom from these conditionings that we have, these desires, chasing, obsessions, cravings, habits, is a kind of a lifelong pursuit. I felt I should go into that. Now, the in the middle of my height of my business success, because at an early age I became successful in business. I set up a whole lot of companies in tech. Before it was a fashionable thing for Indian people to do. And then in my early 40s, that was in the early 1990s, I had these awakenings, and I decided that I'll give this up and pursue what I call my swadharma, my calling, which is to explore these things for myself. And at that point, I had no ambition to fight for dharma or fight for country, or those came later. I was just trying to expand my own horizon, uh, my own experiences. I just wanted to discover, like you become a philosopher or you become a physicist to discover things. It gives you an excitement of discovery. So I've realized that this discovery of who I am and my higher self is also a kind of research, and I want to do that. So I quit everything. I quit my businesses, gave up everything. And since then, I've never looked back to miss that, hey, I had so much business, money, and all that. Why did I give it up? Because I gained more in this new kind of lifestyle. So, and all this happening in the US when I'm sitting there. but connected with the Dharma. So when I started this journey full time, my hope was to discover and share with people. And the reason I wanted to share with people is my son and daughter went to a very nice school in the neighborhood in Princeton, where we lived. And I wanted to go and explain to them, to the other kids, their parents, about our philosophy, our darshan, our way of life, our Vedic way of life. And so my foundation, which I had set up, started giving a lot of grants to schools, to colleges, to universities, large amount of money to learn these things, to teach about them. And that is when I realized that actually they'll take your money, but they're very biased. They'll take your money, they'll thank you, they'll be very polite, very diplomatic, but they'll continue teaching what they were teaching before. And it really troubled me. So I decided that I'm going to get into this in detail myself. And rather than relying on them to do this work, I have to do it myself. So I found myself arguing against the same people I was funding. So I'd give them a grant to do something, and then I would sit down and argue with them. And they would say ki this Infinity Foundation is very good, but this Rajiv is a troublemaker. So let's take the money comes from Infinity Foundation, but then he comes with all these arguments. Ye wo to, they didn't know what to do. In those days, there were not too many Hindus and Indians, contributing as philanthropists. There were not too many places to go. We didn't have the Mahindra and the Tata and the Reliance people like they're now doing, giving all these grants for academic work, but they were not doing that in the early 90s. They were not there. They were not around. In fact, Hindujas were the only other group that were actually into the academic field for India. They were giving some of these grants to Oxford, Columbia, Mumbai University, like that. They had some centers. So I learned a lot about the Kurukshetra of academics. It is a Kurukshetra. It is a battleground. I learned why these biases exist, how the civilizations are each trying to protect themselves, and each has a certain lens through which they are seeing the world, and each has got a profile of the others, and how the Judeo-Christians are well represented, the Islamic groups are well represented, the Maoists, Marxists, left wing are well represented. Chinese in those days were beginning to emerge as a kind of a group beginning to claim. But there's nobody representing us. The gurus didn't want to. Gurus didn't want to. They wanted to be politically correct, goody, sab theek hai, sab log same hai, aise like that. In fact, many of the Hindu temples wouldn't even want me to go and speak because they would say, बहुत controversial कुछ बोल देगा, पता नहीं क्या हो जाएगा. तो we would rather avoid any risk, So this is the insecurity coming from our own people. And then I found government had no interest. The Ministry of External Affairs, the Culture Ministry, I would go to the embassy and the consulate कि भी आप लोग आओ, आप ही के बारे में क्या क्या बोले जा रही हैं ये यूनिवर्सिटी वाले. They were very didn't want to get involved. Either they were ignorant or they didn't have the courage or they just wanted to be what they called secular idea. I don't know why secular means you can't defend yourself. You have to be able to. So this was my situation. And a very hostile environment, which actually turned out to be very good for me because it made me a kshatriya, fight for the truth. So I learned how to argue. Now, they couldn't refuse me a place to argue because I was giving them the funding. So it's like they're sitting and presenting some dissertation or some topic, and I'm the guy who's funded that. So they thought कि कैमरे वैमरे से फोटो वोटो लेकर उसको हार्ड वर्क करके हार्ड डाल के उसको भेज देंगे ठीक हो जाएगा. But then I wanted to argue. So I want, because I'm thinker type, I'm not interested in any publicity, I want to argue. So I got into the mode of fighting back in the very top places in academics in the Western world. Now I have to say all this because we now have, after 2014, after Modi ji came, the floodgates opened. So many influencers came, so many new people came who were nowhere previously, and they all started talking the same thing, most of it taken from the original work we had done, but copying it, recycling it, sending it here and there. So many video channels, all of this came. But none of them have actually gone to the opposing side in their home and argued on their face. Nobody had done that. They're sitting here talking to each other, like minded people, in a safe place and feeling very happy, but basically copy paste, download, online searching, but not really gone in there. I actually spent days, weeks in those places where all this work was going on to pick up things from their direct sources and argue with them. And that is where you become strong. That is where you become emotionally, psychologically resilient. वो आपको बदनामी भी करेंगे, आपको ये वो बोलेंगे, it doesn't bother you, and you become a tough guy also. You become tough emotionally and intellectually very rigorous by facing the hardest, toughest opponents. And that is the Kurukshetra. So one of the works I wrote was, Where are the Pandavas? I wrote this once. Where are the Pandavas today? Kahan hai aise log? We need to have that kind of a revival. So I then shifted to taking on all these problems. And at one point in time, I would go to every conference on India, whether it's religion, social sciences, anthropology, history, philosophy, political science, जो भी departments थे social sciences, humanities में, if anything to do with Asia, South Asia, India, whatever, I would go and I would record and I would give a response, and whether it was welcome or not, I would go on the record that this is my response. And while they talk about free speech, intellectual freedom, they're not able to handle this because मेरे को किसी से कोई जॉब नहीं लेनी, मेरे को किसी से कोई ग्रांट नहीं चाहिए. I can be a free thinker. So I used to tell them, you can't hire me, you can't fire me. So now you have to deal with me. This is the kind of person they're not used to. They're not used to that. Because generally, either they're dealing with some poor people in some village, they come and do research, wo kya karega bechara. Or if it's a rich person, he's giving something because he wants his son to go into college, तो उसको grant दे देंगे Harvard, तो आ जाएगा वो. But somebody who says, I really need nothing out of you, whatever you can do for me is not really what I need. And what I really need, you can't do for me. That I only can do. So मेरे लिए, I'm that free. I'm free from all this. They can't deal with such a person. So that took me for several decades. I had to do this on my own. And then 2014, good news, bad news. Good news is with Modi ji coming, there are many more people suddenly doing this. And so the attacks were also being distributed to many people. So I'm not the only target. Abhi 50 log aur bhi hain jinke piche lage hue. That is a kind of a relief. But the bad news is that the standard of our research went down. A lot of it is just not very solidly argued and quick results. And because they haven't gone, you see, one thing the West is good at is rigor. Their standard of rigor and argumentation is very high. So to argue with them in their highest and finest universities against their best scholars, senior most people, is not a joke. But we have a history of doing that. Adi Shankara went to Mandana Mishra, who was much older than him, and he was a nobody, and he argued. We've had Vivekanand go to right there in front of them and say things. So we've had that. We've had Gandhi. We have very audacious and talk, whether you agree with him or not, but he had that audacity. So this business of being very audacious requires study, requires your own adhyatmic, meditative kind of sense of absolute security in who you are. And then it requires being articulate. And that requires practice, practice, practice. You got to keep practicing and you get more and more good at, doing this kind of debating. So this can only be done, according to me, full time. It cannot be some hobby कि कुछ करेंगे और साथ में once in a while जाके किसी मंथन में जाके एक speech दे देंगे. It's not like that. This is like so intense, you have to do it full time. So I started doing this, and this critical thinking, analysis of situations, allowed me to find out what are the patterns of behavior. What are the patterns? ये कास्ट का प्रॉब्लम है, ओके. एक ये आर्यन ड्रविडियन डिवाइड के बारे में, आर्यन इन्वेजन थ्योरी के बारे में बोल रहे हैं. इस तरह करते करते आई फाउंड दैट देयर आर मेनी काइंड ऑफ बिग पैटर्न्स, बिग प्रॉब्लम एरियाज. और उनमें ये ईच ऑफ देम दे हैव अ सर्टेन फ्रेमवर्क, their framework. And in that framework, they're thinking, they're making some assumptions, and they are thinking, and they have a lot of data to prove their point of view, and they're teaching it to the students. The students are learning that same thing. So I learned that these frameworks have developed over a long period of time. Framework is a kind of like a siddhant, what we would call siddhant. It's a theoretical a theory of something, a siddhant. So it could be a siddhant on social justice, a Marxist theory of exploitation. It could be a feminist theory of gender. So the West has got all these frameworks. They've developed these different schools of thought using these frameworks. And we don't have that. When we are fighting, we're just fighting one instance कि अरे इसके against ये बोला तो कुछ आंदोलन हो जाएगा. But what is our framework? What is our theoretical framework? That we haven't paid attention to. So I started finding common patterns in various buckets, various topics, and found that there is a pattern and I can develop a framework. Now, framework development is something you learn as a physicist because you're developing a theory, a gravitation theory or theory of this or that. And those are frameworks in which many, many examples can be solved. Once you understand a certain law, a law of nature or a principle, like a siddhant of nature, then you can use it to solve many, many problems. I also learned this in computer science, because in computer science you are building an algorithm, you're building a model, and this model can be used for many cases. Many cases can be sorted out with a particular model. So I wanted to take the scientific background and create frameworks about how our tradition, our culture can be used for interpreting modern society, interpreting our side, interpreting the other side, giving a response. And I found that the narrative war is actually a war of frameworks. It's a war of our framework and their framework. So their framework may say कि social justice की ऐसे होती है. There are people who are exploiters and exploited, oppressors and oppressed, and therefore this caste is oppressor, this caste is oppressed, things like that. They've come up with these frameworks, and we have a different framework on social justice, what it means. They have a framework on diversity. Our framework is a very different framework on what is meant by diversity. Diversity is not a skin color कि वो black है, white है तो diversity होगी. It's the diversity of thought, diversity of ideas, which ironically the left does not want diversity of thought and diversity of ideas. They want one standard syndicated way of thinking everybody should have. So in the name of diversity, they're actually suppressing diversity of thought, which is very ironic. So, it's a clash of frameworks. तो हमको अपने framework बनाने हैं, उनको मजबूत करना है, उनको propagate करना है, उनको फिर spread करना है to the next generation. Like we create sampradayas and paramparas in the past. We haven't created intellectual sampradayas and paramparas in modern times. They have a whole Marxist lineage for 200 years. They've been reproducing the same framework so many times. And they have Freudian psychoanalysis framework, they have postmodernism framework, now they have this wokeism framework. उनके पास इसी काफ़ी lineages बन गई हैं, and they're very good at it. It's not just Christianity as a framework, that of course, but there are many other kind of frameworks. And we need that. And having a framework is not the same thing as having a list of examples. You can have many, many examples, you can do statistical, compile data, write a book, जिसमें खूब सारे ऐसे examples हैं. But without a framework, you don't have a conceptual understanding of what's the philosophy, what's the underlying model. You need a model and then many examples of that model. So that's where I wanted to focus. So basically, if you look at my methodology, it starts with experiences, current affairs. Pahalgam mein kya hua? I have a framework for it. I have a framework I published a framework on this whole thing. I've called it the Caliphate Project, as a framework of why these things are happening. And it's a very innovative, novel kind of a framework which has created some controversy. I want that. I want people to respond to me, and we are having some good dialogues in the US. I put it up in the US Congress. The Mike Johnson, who is the Speaker of the House in the US, I was invited to give a talk where he and me were talking, just two of us. and I presented my framework, and that is just after Pahalgam had happened. I said, you need to understand it very differently. It is not an India-Pakistan war. It is not a territorial war. Kashmir is not a territorial war. That is just a symptom. But beneath the symptom, there is a deep framework or deep agenda that is over 1,000 years old. And I want you to understand that framework. And they were very impressed by that, because I told them that if you understand the framework of what is happening in Gaza, you will understand what is happening in Kashmir, because it is the same thing. They were very, so they asked me to write it down, so मैंने लिख के publish कर दिया. So then I got a call from a Jewish scholar in Israel, and he wants to add a Gaza chapter to explain कि हमारा भी यही framework है. So this is how you build frameworks, and you build something deeper than one example. It is not कि वो example के बारे में उसने उसको shoot किया, किसने plane लगा दिए, क्या हो गया. I'm not interested in that. I want to go deep into the philosophical framework. So I have always taken an issue and try to look for something beyond just what the examples are saying, what the obvious data is, and develop a deep framework and operate at that level. So this example turned into a model, turned into a framework, has to be connected with the fundamental principles of Indian thought. This is very important. So what I'm building, it goes from Indian thought all the way to current affairs. कुछ बात हुई, I want to understand ये क्या हुआ. But I want to understand in a certain drishti. The drishti I bring is my traditional drishti. So using that drishti, I want to see what's happening in the world. Whether it is, jet engines, why we should have and why we don't have them, and whether it is Pahalgam or whatever it is, कहीं riot हो गया, कहीं क्या हो गया. I want to philosophize about it in a very abstract way and build these frameworks, and not be content just knowing what the facts are, क्या news है, क्या खबर है. I don't want to see life isolated कि ये event हो गया और ये एक event हो गया और ये हो गया. I want to see उनके आपस में ताल्लुक क्या है, and what there's a deeper connection. And these are the insights you get in meditative states. Some higher intelligence gives you these links. You get these links कि ये इसका link ऐसा है. That's a very amazing and a very beautiful experience. So I am now turning 75, coming up soon, and I am training others, youngsters, to take this forward. And I'm very glad that you have a Center for Indic Studies where you also have youngsters. And recently I had a meeting where BAPS people called me to meet their senior person. I've known BAPS for a long time, and they have been, I had told Prabhu Swami in the year 2000, that the big gurus need to organize training their young followers to get into the academic field and create a whole army of intellectual Kshatriyas under the guidance of the Guru. So they remembered that, and they told me that we have a few dozen of these people in UK, US. Why don't you come together with us? We'll do a joint event. So we are thinking of doing a joint event somewhere in the US where we'll bring our scholars, they'll bring their scholars, and we will create a workshop to sort of train these people further. They have got the money and they have got the students, but they don't have a mentor. They don't have a mentor, that's their problem. So they want to collaborate. So we're going to do that. Now, given this general background, I want to talk about today's book, Who is Raising Your Children? So the framework is that the left, wokeism is the current form of the left, has created a whole theory of education, which is very strange. The theory of education says, thank you, first of all, the theory of education says that elite people, dominant people in the past created all the structures of society. Okay, ठीक है, they made structures of society. They made institutions. They came up with values. So whatever values you have, whatever institutions you have, should be dismantled, because these values and these institutions are the product of oppression and bias. And unless you dismantle them, you cannot get freedom from them. And so the same bias is being propagated generation after generation. One of the structures they want to dismantle is family. Very strange. Family is the method of transmitting your bias to the next generation. तो जब तक फैमिली है तो वो bias चलता जाएगा. And therefore, to break this bias, you have to break the family concept. To break the family concept, you have to change this idea of male, female gender, the binary gender. And there are now many, many genders. And therefore, you have to encourage these other genders to fight this binary, this anti-binary gender. That's an ideology. And then you have to get all the people who are supposedly oppressed. So now Muslims in America have clubbed with the left and said, we the Muslims are oppressed and the Jews are oppressing us, even in America. So this Gaza philosophy of oppressor, oppressed has been now brought to rest of the world. कि भी अब लंदन में भी हमको oppress किया जा रहा है, UK में, USA में भी किया जा रहा है. So the left is helping those people to get more rights and to fight for each other together. It's a coalition. So the left and the blacks as the underdog oppressed, and the Muslims claiming to be the underdog oppressed, and the LGBTQ claim हम भी underdog है, हम भी oppressed हो रहे हैं, and the Dalits also have joined in, and now Khalistan is also joining in. So these groups have all come together as kind of the woke coalition, which says कि हम oppressed हैं, and the structures of society, the nation states, the constitutions, the laws, we got to fight these in order to liberate ourselves. This is a framework in which they argue social justice. So in that framework, they are putting education. How to educate your children against this framework. That is what this book is exposing. Okay, these people have taken over UNESCO. They are infiltrated US Department of Education until the recent government. They have got these principles in places like Harvard. You know, when you are applying, one of the criteria for selection is your essay. आप essay लिखवाते हैं अमेरिकन यूनिवर्सिटीज़ में. तो नंबर शंबर मार्क्स वार्क्स तो चलते हैं, बट मोर देन मेरिट nowadays ये फैशन बन गया because of this woke. फैशन बन गया है कि we will see the values and the character. मतलब that's a way to assess the politics of this person. कि political identity क्या है? Do we want this guy or not? So a very good friend of mine, she raised her children in Sanskrit at home, and they applied. तो उनके rejection आ रहे थे. तो I said I will write his essay. I will give him some points. He can write his essay. Because if he's writing कि मैं ट्रेडिशन का हूँ, संस्कृत पढ़ता हूँ, ये मेरी ट्रेडिशन है, और मैं फलाने यूनिवर्सिटी में, आपकी यूनिवर्सिटी में जाकर आई एम गोइंग टू ब्रिंग संस्कृत, ग्रामर, लिंग्विस्टिक्स, आई एम गोइंग टू ब्रिंग ऑल दैट, द बायस इज ऑलरेडी देयर कि ये ना ऑप्रेसर है. सो आई सेड कि वो बात भूलो, डू नॉट मेंशन योर आइडेंटिटी वगैरह, उस अलग तरीके के स्पिन करो, एंड श्योर इनफ इट प्रोड्यूस रिजल्ट्स. आई नो वन फ्रेंड ऑफ माइन, his daughter was applying to colleges, and they said इसको थोड़ी guidance दे दो कि essay में क्या लिखना चाहिए, because in essay you have to write about who you are, what you bring to the university, what is your contribution going to be. They want to know that kind of a person. So they're giving a lot of weightage to this, चाहे वो नालायक भी हो. Now this person was not very good in studies. Her marks were not that good. So my challenge was how to coach her कि essay में क्या लिखो that it will counter all that problem. So she wanted to apply to certain places, and so I said look at their catalog and come up with a very left-wing attack on their catalog. So this worked. So it's almost like they're wanting the rebellious person, the person who's going to have strikes, this JNU type culture. They're encouraging that. That is the woke ideology. They're not looking for people who are on merit. They'll make a great scientist, a great technician, a technocrat, a great medical doctor. They're not looking. They're looking for people who, in their opinion, are disrupting and dismantling the old system of abuse and oppression. So problem is कि इन लोगों को फिर जॉब नहीं मिलेगी because no employer wants to hire such a person. I mean, if you can't do your job, you're not good at what you are supposed to be good at. Who going to hire you just because you know how to make some speeches and political speeches? Who needs that? उससे तो किसी की फैक्ट्री नहीं चलेगी, किसी का बिजनेस नहीं चलेगा. No sensible industrialist will hire such people whose basic qualification and obsession and passion is to fight the system and or whatnot. So this is the problem that America has. This is the woke culture from places like Harvard down to schools. And this book is exposing how it has come to India through the NCRT. Now they are changing. NCRT has changed. But NCRT, UPSC, they are still following the Western idea of sociology, the Western social sciences. They're still following that. The Western idea of social justice. Indian corporates, when they have a thing called DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, ESG, environment, society, governance. These are very nice ideas, but the criteria and the values are not Indian values. This is all these indexes are not Indian indexes. So this is a problem that we are exposing in this book. And we're one of the themes that United Nations has wanted as part of their education curriculum that they are putting through everybody is that something called global citizenship. Now, बहुत अच्छा लगता है global citizenship. Everybody wants their child to be a global citizen. But when you look at the content of global citizenship is defined in order to kind of obfuscate, circumvent, in order to supersede nationalism. In other words, जो patriotism है, nationalism है, उसको छोड़ के global citizen बनना है. So these global citizens are then encouraged to become anti-national. In the name of being a global citizen, you go and join all kind of things to fight your own country. Now China is very smart. उन्होंने साइन तो कर दिया ये UN चार्टर जो ये था इस वाला SDGs उसको कहते हैं. They signed all this, but एक clause लगा दिया that it should not violate national laws. एक line. And then they changed their national laws to prevent this from happening. In their own education policy, in their own country, they made the national laws to protect themselves. So this is not being implemented in China against Chinese nation. But in other countries, they're not so smart. They've just blindly adopted the UN standards, thinking a UN standard is अच्छा है. And now we've given examples of so many schools. This book is about schools rather than colleges. The examples of school after school where this sort of woke culture has entered the schools, and this is dismantling family values, this is dismantling gender roles that are normal, conventional gender roles. It's dismantling the idea of social justice, it's dismantling the idea of nation in the name of globalization and being a global citizen and so on. So this book is a framework which is existing. We are deconstructing that framework. And then in this book, we are presenting a Vedic framework of how to deal with the same problems of diversity, of gender diversity, of injustice, of being a global citizen. Our idea of Vasudeva Kutumbakam as a global citizen is different idea than the idea of global citizenship that they're teaching. So it is not that global citizenship is bad, but we have our own idea about what that means. You see, so this the projects that I've taken on, are to target Western frameworks which have become very powerful, not only in those countries but also our country has adopted it. And the way to decolonize is you have to first live in that society. You can't do it from far away, copy paste karke. You have to really understand what that framework is all about, be able to debate, discuss, argue, agree with them, disagree with them. And then with so much knowledge and expertise and confidence, you can then turn it around and bring your own frameworks from your own civilization. So that is the project I have. and that is why this book is there. The book came out in English, I think last year sometime, and we have a Hindi translation, which we have here today. This is the first launch of that Hindi book, but on the 27th will be a big grand launch in Delhi also. But this is the first launch anywhere in the world of the Hindi book. So I want to thank all of you, and I will be happy to take a few minutes of questions. Radhika, is that good? Okay.
So today, social media has become a big tool to spread Western and anti-Indian ideas. How should we understand and respond to such narratives on social media?
So you see, that is what my whole journey has been for 35 years, is to, the wrong thing to do is कि उन्होंने हमको गाली दी, हम भी उसको गाली दे देंगे. Because you're not really going deeper than that. You first have to spend a lot of time diagnosis. Like a doctor does not give इलाज नहीं करता पहले, उसको diagnose करेगा कि ये क्या, इसके नीचे क्या बात है, what is these are symptoms. Symptom के नीचे diagnosis करना है. Then you can come up with a counter strategy and go ahead with it. So social media में जो fights हो रही हैं, I find that many of them are just repeating the same fight over and over again. My approach is that I understand their framework and counter it at the level of the framework. That is how I prefer to do it. So it depends on the particular example you're saying, but that's how I would do it.
Next question. In your view, with your elaborate explanation, we get a lot to learn. But still, which harmful ideas in our education system should be removed immediately?
Well, if you want to get me in trouble, I will tell you something controversial also. I started a critique of the Indian Constitution many years ago. I think now other people have, one or two books have also come out. The Indian Constitution is actually a British product in the 1930s. British made this. About 80% of it India didn't change. Same जो 1930s में निकाला था कि इंडिया में कैसे रूल करना चाहिए, भारत को रूल कैसे करना चाहिए अंग्रेज़ों ने, तो उसके लिए उन्होंने ये बनाया था. And this change, Indians made minor changes, and we give a lot of credit to people who are the founding fathers of the Constitution, but they did not do original work. They did not start with our own heritage and our own old civilization. We did not have this kind of a government like we are currently having, and this kind of constitutional democracy we did not have ever in the past. So to tell people that the constitutional democracy is a colonial system, and therefore you have to decolonize from that. And in the IKS books series, isko bhi nana is not going to be an easy thing because it will be very controversial. और आपको भी पीछे आपके भी लग जाएंगे. So, but you have to do it. So you see, these are, I can give you some examples which are very powerful, but you have to do a lot of homework because I'm writing a book on Rashtra, which I've been writing for some years. How Rashtra is not the same as nation, the Western idea of nation. So I went to RSS कि आपका नाम starts with Rashtra, तो आपको मालूम होगा. So they gave me referral to this book, that book. Some of the main writings by RSS founders start with a big explanation about nation as in the Western sense, and then they say ye Rashtra hai. So even the RSS did not start from the Vedic origins. I looked at the Vedic, if you search the Vedas, the word Rashtra appears over 30 times. So I started with that. What is Rashtra according to that? And then the word Rajya appears many times. So what you call Rashtrapati is actually Rajapati. He's not Rashtrapati in the true sense. So, so much you have to challenge. I mean, where do you start? If you start talking like this, then the whole books have to be rethought. We have basically taken the Western structures and concepts and made some little modification here and there and put in some, Hindi words or in Sanskrit words. A lot of people think that if they use words like aloo gobi, so that means हम अब Indian बन गए हैं, because we know some खाने पीने का, and we know some Bollywood, and we know some cricket and all that. That's pop culture. That's fine, but to go deep into our history, when they are doing the NCRT books, I would start with philosophy before history, because the history has to be interpreted through the philosophy. If the same set of facts, historical facts, ये हुआ उसने लड़ाई की उसने उसको जीता ये हराया वो हराया, you can interpret it through a certain philosophical lens, and you get a certain meaning, and you can interpret the same thing to a different philosophical lens and you get a different meaning, same set of facts. So philosophy is more foundational and more fundamental than history. But nobody's thought like that. Every time I've talked about I have a term, the grand narrative of India. That's a book series I'm writing, the grand narrative of India. Both there's, I think I gave some talks here on the Indian grand narrative many years back, right here in this room. So the Indian grand narrative is, people think ये history book लिखनी चाहिए इसको. So many people said आप आपको history book का chairman बना देंगे. It's not a history book only, it's a deeper than the history book. So when you say where do we change, it's a very broad statement.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Next question is from Dr. Payal Mehta, ma'am. Please, if you could stand. Sir, how can Indian schools and colleges resist foreign pressure and influence, both at a basic and higher level?
So I think the matter is getting even worse because they've allowed foreign colleges to come to India, foreign universities coming to India. तो हम एक तरफ से तो कह रहे हैं हम विश्व गुरु हैं, but we are policy is to make us विश्व चेला. तो विश्व गुरु तो हमने उनको बना दिया. हम कहेंगे पहले हम लोगों को वहाँ भेजते थे पढ़ने के लिए, हाँ, हार्वर्ड and they would come back. Now we are saying आप यहीं आ जाओ. So this is actually a step in the wrong direction. To become Vishwa Guru, we have to take back the, Nalanda, Takshashila, these 20, 30 major universities. What was their curriculum? We have to produce the liberal arts of our type and export it to other people, our values. Then we can say कि हम विश्व गुरु बन रहे हैं. तो बोलने से तो कोई भी बोल सकता है. But the too much foreign influence is harming our country. I think their influence is very good in STEM because they have good technology. So you want to study some STEM things, some medicine, some this or that is fine. But anything to do with social sciences, humanities, law, business practices, these kind of things should be from our culture, roots, and our point of view. So I have a problem. India has got the largest number of foreign students in the US. And if you look at the average amount spent per year, the total comes to like tens of billions of dollars per year. Tens of billions of dollars. You know how many universities could be started in India? How that funding could be used in India to upgrade the universities if the government gave everybody grants, educational grants to upgrade, increase teacher salaries. To basically it's a money game. If you can save money from the export of this money to foreign countries and spend it here, better labs, better everything, it could be so much better for us. So I am opposed to sending a whole lot of our students overseas, and even more opposed to inviting foreign universities to set up in India.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from our Deputy Registrar, Sukitu Jani, sir. What small steps can parents take to protect their children from harmful ideas and influences?
Very good. पहली तो बात ये है, who is raising your children? You should be raising your children. आपके बच्चे हैं, you should be raising your children. But handing them over to school or handing them over to social media, and the school is run by some sarkari type syllabus curriculum, and the sarkar has been influenced. They've infiltrated Niti Aayog. They've infiltrated these various educational, organizations at the school level. So the attack on India now is also at the school children level, because if you can break them up, that's a breaking India force. By the time these kids grow up, they'll be different values, different ideas, and alienated, disconnected from their own roots. So parents have to assert their values, spend more time with the kids, and play participate in the school system, read what they are being told in the school. If you disagree, go there and argue with them. I know some schools will say, "Chap, बच्चों को ले जाओ कहीं और ले जाओ." But if enough parents get together, you can make noise. If you make a noise in the social media, it'll embarrass them. They'll have to do something. So that kind of activism is needed by parents. But often parents are too busy. They are both working. They have no time, and they don't have much knowledge. So उनको all they want is कि ये अच्छे स्कूल से उसको ठप्पा मिल जाएगा तो कॉलेज में आएगा, कॉलेज का ठप्पा मिल जाएगा जॉब आ जाएगी. They are not thinking more than that. That's
On behalf of Indus University and everyone present here, we extend our heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Rajiv Malhotra ji for sharing his profound insights with us today. Your words have not only enlightened our minds, but also inspired us to look deeper into our civilizational roots and contemporary challenges. We are truly blessed to have witnessed your presence and wisdom on this platform. Now, I may invite Dr. Nagesh Bhandari sir to felicitate Dr. Rajiv Malhotra ji with a plaque of honor as a token of our respect and gratitude. Thank you, sir. As a mark of deep respect and gratitude, we now present a specially created sketch portrait of Dr. Rajiv Malhotra ji. This artistic tribute symbolizes the admiration and honor we hold for his remarkable contributions and visionary leadership. I request Ms. Radhika Bhandari ma'am to kindly present this portrait to Dr. Rajiv Malhotra ji. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir.